Hi everybody. We have more to go through. I'm doing this early. I'm doing this a week early, so hopefully we can get to all of these wonderful questions. I can get it done. It'll be ready for you early, but I won't post it until after you turn it in. Okay. Do you believe the War Powers Act? Oh, mine. Blah, 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 blah. So everybody knows. This is legislature reading part 2 that I'm going to review for you guys. So you have access to the review. Use it as you please. I'm going to have the book out. I'll be going through all of the answers with you. Also, I apologize for the fact that you are getting the versions with all my notes in them. Maybe it's a good thing, but I'm sure it bothers some of you. But this is the only book that I have, so kind of is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. Okay. Do you believe the War Powers Act gives the executive branch not enough power, just enough power, or too much power? What other factors might we consider when looking at funding for modern war? Why is my eye watering? I don't know. Okay. Personally, I believe the War Powers Act gives considerably too much power to the executive branch. That's why you see in my little notes I said failure of checks and balances. Military funding didn't used to always be this intense here. And now it is this intense and it's this large. So for the fact that they can go to combat for 60 days with an option of a 30-day extension before Congress has to approve funds to be used for some sort of action, I have like a clear understanding. I know that the executive branch at times needs to move very quickly. For example, like Osama bin Laden, that's a prime example. They need to be able to make these choices quickly. But I don't like the lack of transparency and the lack of oversight. It's as if the executive branch can just do as they please, which seems like what they have been doing in Iraq and Afghanistan so far, and likely Syria as well. So that's frustrating. And just to think that we have troops all over the world up in people's business that we don't need to be in. Like, do we need a base? Do we need this many bases in Germany and Japan and throughout Africa and Central and South America? It just doesn't particularly make sense for this amount of money to go into sustaining the lifestyles of how many people we have involved in our military. That does not make sense to me. The other thing, when I said, what other factors might we consider when looking at funding for modern war? Even if Congress says, like, no, we're not doing this, the budget is already so large for the military that they can kind of do as they please. Like, do they really need to ask Congress for more money? Maybe. Probably not with how large our military budget already is. No one's questioning what the current military budget is. I mean, people are, but not those that could change that military budget. They're not asking. So, or at least not in large enough quantities. I'm sure there are congressmen and women that are asking, but not enough of them. So when I look at other funding for forms of modern war, is we have private contractors that are consistently hired. We already have this massive budget that is not particularly, like, the American public doesn't know how that budget is being distributed. And then on top of that, we start seeing like all the issues surrounding violence, specifically violence against the LGBTQIA community and women in the military. For the concept that the military is actually an egalitarian and socialist construct, it's rather frustrating to see how much abuse goes on towards women and the LGBTQIA community and civilians of any country outside of the United States. Cool. Okay, number 1, done. Do you believe implied powers for Congress from the Elastic Clause benefit American people or are a detriment to American people? So there's examples that go in both directions for this. So Congress was able to push the Marriage Equality Act because of this clause. I personally believe that probably benefited a lot of American people. I don't know who it was a detriment to. It was a positive rights example. It wasn't negative. It wasn't taking away rights from anyone. But they can take away rights from people to a certain extent. So I'm sure that in many cases it has been a detriment to American people, but my best example is the benefit to American people. What are things that Congress has done that has been a detriment to American people that seems like they overstepped? We'll have to talk about that in class, because I'm sure you guys have examples of the detriment or more examples of the benefit. Maybe there's no way it's only a benefit, but it'd be cool. What specific roles of the House and Senate, what are the specific roles of the House and Senate when it comes to impeachment proceedings? The House can impeach, they can call for an impeachment, they can try to charge, but the Senate has to investigate and decide whether the impeachment will actually go through and be applied, as we've seen in so many examples. Not so many, and 2 examples, which seems like a lot considering like how many times it's happened in the past, with former President Donald Trump. Oh, it feels nice to say former. Okay. Identify and define leadership roles that exist in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay, this was getting into some like very specifics. I honestly want to say you should watch the first couple episodes of House of Cards, because that made this so much clearer for me, and it's gotten foggy since, but it did make things considerably clearer for me at the time. So we have, for the House leaders, we have at the top of the power pyramid, as listed in the text, the Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, was the first female Speaker of the House. Blah, 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 blah. On the next rung down, so we know Speaker of the House it's third in line for the presidency. We have the president, we have the vice president, and then we have Speaker of the House. Yep. I'm questioning myself right now, but I know I'm right. Okay. Next rung, we have floor leaders. They lead debate among their party and guide discussion from their side of the aisle. So we will have one for Democrats and one for Republicans. I don't know whether independents have floor leaders. I don't think there's enough of them for them to have a floor leader. That's sad though. I think it would be much more beneficial if we had like 5 different parties hanging out and floor leaders for each. There would be a lot more people sitting in spaces of responsibility and representation surrounding those groups, and you would be able to align with, like, there would be more diversities of opinion being presented rather than everybody just aligning with one or the other. The deputy of the floor leaders is the whip. That is what Kevin Spacey was in House of Cards. They are in charge of party discipline. The whip keeps the tally of votes among his or her party members. So they keep kind of an unofficial track of what direction people are leaning in and whether they are going to vote to support or not support a bill that is on the floor. Each party also has a conference chair below the whip. This chairperson takes care of party matters such as heading the organization of party-centered groups in each house. So a lot of bureaucracy, it kind of explains how and why it's so intense to listen to like congressional meetings. They're always making all these references and using acronyms and calling for things. It's hard to understand all of it consistently unless you live in it physically. For the Senate, the president of the Senate is non-voting, and they only vote in case of the tie. The vice president can vote to break it. We also have the president pro tempore, or temporary president. The pro temp is traditionally the most senior member in the majority party. Often, however, even the pro temp assigns his or her role to a junior party member. So it sounds like a not as important role. It sounds like just a title, and that is it. Then we have the Senate Majority Leader, who wields much more power in the Senate. That would be like Mitch McConnell was the Senate Majority Leader. And there was always news about him because of how powerful he was in the Senate. They have more power in the Senate than the Vice President and the Pro Tem. There you go. That answers that one. Why might it be important to know what committees your representative sits on? So if you have specific passions and you have fought to ensure that you have voted for someone that has similar passions to you, for example, in Detroit we have a lot of issues with clean water and clean air. If our representatives in Congress are not sitting on committees related specifically to clean water and clean air acts, to environmental activity, to regulating and restricting corporations from polluting the air or water, we would just have an expectation that our representatives would sit on those committees. But I don't think that's always the case. So keeping track of what committees your representatives sit on, that's where they're putting a lot of their work in. That's where all of their aides are hustling to create or push through a bill that would hopefully benefit you, because their whole goal as a representative is to benefit their constituents. So that environmental example is one of them. I'm trying to think of another example that would be a little bit more conservative. I think the environmental example, though, should also be conservative. There are plenty of people that I would consider conservative, but they care about the environment. If I think of one, I'll bring it up, but I think that's a pretty good one. Just be conscious of the committees that your representatives sit on, because that's where they're putting in the majority of their work. A representative recently was rejected from all committees due to her involvement in QAnon and the January 6th riots. Do you believe taking her out of all committees was the right thing to do? I think this is dicey. Like, her constituents voted for her in, even though she had all those beliefs, which means that they support those same belief systems. This is what the Founding Fathers were scared about when they said factions. And they knew that people were relatively easy to manipulate. So when it comes to stories like QAnon, we can see how easy it is to manipulate the American people, and just people in general. It's not even Americans only. But she needs to be able to sit on committees to properly represent her people and garner the needs of her constituents who voted her into a position of power. So what do we do about this situation where we see factions grow so strong and so large that we have, what I would consider like pretty crazy situations going on? You can't have someone who is calling for the death of the current executive powers sitting on committees, but she was voted in, so what can you do? It's a sticky situation. What is the purpose of forming caucuses? Voting blocks. The Black Caucus is one of the strongest caucuses. They form a voting block, and that block, I guess to describe it, their votes have more power because they function as a large block. So if there's 11 people in the Black Caucus and you need 51 votes to get something passed, 11 is a good chunk of that 51 votes. What do you need to do to cater to the Black Caucus in order to have them support the bill that you're trying to push through? And that's where I think things get kind of shady in politics, because we start seeing people trading favors in order to get bills passed. And I think that leads to our representatives not thinking so much about what the constituents need and more about what they're willing to give up in order to achieve their means, which should benefit you. Their means should benefit the constituents that they represent. But whatever they folded on before that they might not have voted on could hurt their constituents. And be something that their constituents wouldn't support. So you're in this tricky place where you're like, I want to get this passed, and in order to get this passed, I need to cater to this group of people. But they want something that I might not want, or that my constituents might not agree with. What if I put my name on something that gets passed and my constituents get so upset that I'm not reelected? Then what was the point? What did I get done? How long will the initial bill even last? And whatever was in that initial bill I was trying to fortify and trading votes in order to achieve, like, was it worth losing my position as representative because I signed on to a bill that doesn't meet my constituents' needs. That sounds confusing, but I hope that makes sense to you guys. I'm trying to think of like an example at school or something that would work. If the juniors want vending machines and the freshmen want, I don't know, something that would be a detriment to the juniors. They want their class to be able to have free hall passes if they have a certain GPA or above. No, this isn't gonna work. I don't know. I'm gonna find a way to give an example in class. We can talk more about it. What is a House of Senate rule that you particularly like or dislike, and why? I thought these were super interesting when it comes to all of the different rules that are listed. I'm just making sure. I did skip the question, you guys. On page 86, there's a graphic. I want to talk about that graphic in person. So just so you guys know that. I knew that I missed something. That you particularly like or dislike when it comes to the House and Senate. So I don't like the idea of a committee of the whole. And I get that it's an unofficial means of meeting, but I think that it gives a false precept that Guam and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and American Samoa, I'm missing one, I think, and DC, I think gives a false precept that their votes will be counted, and they won't. I don't really like that. Also, what else was in here? The House limits debate to keep things moving quickly, and the Senate doesn't. The Senate has filibusters. So I think that's, I don't know, it's not that I like or dislike it. Filibusters have been used in many different ways, where you just speak endlessly until a term is up so that nothing can be voted on. But I don't think it's that beneficial. I think it sounds petty. I don't think we should be using filibusters. But then again, I've seen them used to what I believe would be my benefit. So, why would the Senate rather than the House have rules in any work surrounding foreign affairs? Senate terms are 6 years. House rules are 2 years. House terms are 2 years. The Senate terms being 6 years means any decisions they make on foreign affairs have more longevity. They will last longer. The turnover in the Senate is shorter, so they evolve slower. So it's more likely that they will be able to solidify like good foreign affairs placements for ambassadors, things like that, without them being upheaved every 2 years. That's a lot of bureaucratic mess and paperwork to get through. Last, if you were in Congress, would you rather be in the House or the Senate, and why? The Senate is a more powerful position. There's less people there, and they're there longer. So if I can get myself at age 27 into the Senate, I'm gonna be in the Senate. Usually though, it's pretty hard to get a Senate seat because there's only 100 of them, and because they're longer lasting, it's easier to get into the House of Representatives, and there would be more people, like more progressives and young representatives like me there. I don't know if I'd be able to find friends in the Senate, but I could for sure find friends in the House. That's my stance on that. The Senate is considerably more powerful though. But how powerful can you be in a situation like that if you don't have any friends? Yeah. Okay, that was a whole 20 minutes. My mouth hurts. I hope that was good. I hope that was useful. And I will see y'all later. We'll talk about this in class. Bye, everyone.